Hello, everyone. My name is Fabrício Assunção. I'm the coordinator of the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth and the Joanna de Angelis International Study Groups. I'm honored to be your host for tonight's study. Welcome to our Spiritist Study Group, where we explore the teachings of Spiritism and delve into the first Joanna de Angelis book from the psychological series, The Currentness of Jesus. Tonight, with a serene but saddened heart, our study group, Parent of Jesus, pay its deepest tributes to one of the greatest exponents of Spiritism, Divaldo Pereira Franco. Divaldo was more than a brilliant speaker or a dedicated medium. He was a true message of love, hope, and charity. For decades, he traveled throughout Brazil and the world, sharing the enlightening and comforting words of the gospel in the light of Spiritist teaching, bringing comfort and awakening conscience. His work was marked by humility, dedication to those who suffer, and unwavering commitment of goodness. The Mansão do Caminho, the fruit of his work and love, will continue to be a beacon of many hearts seeking shelter and guidance. Yesterday, Divaldo returns to the spiritual realm, surrounded by light and gratitude. His legacy lives on in every word, every example, and every life he touched. And we, who continue on our earthly journey, renew our commitment to continue sowing the ideas that he embodied so well. With deep gratitude, on behalf of this study group, we say, goodbye, Star Sower. Your example of light and love will guide our steps forevermore. We close this homage with a quote from Joanna de Angelis. Great men, whatever they are, become an indelible light, pointing out liberating paths. Joanna de Angelis. Fly high, Edvald, and watch over us. Let me have this opportunity now and introduce our speakers. Tonight, we are honored to have with us our renowned speakers, Dr. Anaí Fonseca from the Medical Spiritists Association of Brazil. Anaí is a psychiatrist and a Jungian analyst. She teaches Spiritist psychology by Joanna de Angelis. Dr. Donna Sis from the Spiritist Institute in the USA. Dunn is an author and gives public talks on spirituality and spiritism in the USA and internationally. Dr. Humberto Schubter is a member of the Brazilian Academy of Philosophy. Humberto is a professor, researcher, and author. Sylvia Gibbons from the Chico Xavier Spiritist Society in the UK. Sylvia is a humanistic counselor, bioenergetic, psychodrama, and deep memory process therapist. To our lovely speakers, welcome to our study group. As we gather tonight to discuss and reflect on Joanna de Angelis' teachings, I invite you all to share your thoughts, insights, and questions. Our goal is to create a supportive and thought-provoking environment where we can deepen our understanding of Spiritism and its principle. Our study group is a space for reflection, discussion, and spiritual growth. In this session, we will delve into the introduction of the first chapter of the book, The Currentness of Jesus. The chapter 1, Jesus and Challenge. To start our discussion, I would like to invite Sylvia Gibbons to open the debate for us. Over to you, Sylvia.
Okay, good night and welcome everyone. This turned out to be a more special meeting than we can have ever imagined. given that Rivaldo has left us and went home. And although I'm sure everyone is very sad, on the other hand, we're happy. He fulfilled his work. He left us, a body of work. And I think the only thing we can do really is to continue the work that he started in each one of us in our ways, serving and learning from him who dedicated his life to the work. So we come to this book, which is the first one of the psychological series. And this book was published in 1989. Basically, it deals with the difficulties and the problems that we face on a day-to-day life. So you can imagine that how relevant this book is. And it's almost prophetic in many ways. I think we need this book now more than we did in 1989. And I was just saying to them, I remember when this book actually came out and Divaldo had written it. And he would come to England and bring this. So we always had it first, was the first things that were happening. So it's really very important. So I think basically I'm going to give a very brief introduction to the book and to the first chapter, and then we will open to discussion and people will say, what they feel about the book and everything. So, as I said, that this book, it's is the teachings of Jesus that is very, very appropriate for today more than ever. And I personally felt that this book should have called Jesus Today, because it is relevant. And I think basically he talks about Jesus and what he was and how he could connect with people and how he knew the person, without they saying anything, he knew what they were. I mean, we cannot imagine how much it was. But he knew the innermost of every single person that he ever came across him. But I think one thing that is very important, and I find one of the most important things of Joanna is that she can explain everything in the psychology with clarity, with update, cutting edge discoveries in psychology and in everything. But she has never lost her connection with the Master, with Jesus. And I think I very much see Joanna as one of the people who were a martyr of Christianity, and her life from the moment that she met Jesus belonged to him. All her life she served him. And it's such an honor to just be able to study, because I feel when I do, I connect with her and with him. So she talks about how Jesus could connect with people, how he would know what they were feeling and how he could help them. But I think one of the things that always impressed me, and I think you can feel that reading Joanna, is that Jesus, even though he did a lot of healing and cures and everything, he never thought going around healing people. He would always say, what do you want me to do for you? He would always ask the question. And I think in the point that Joanna makes here, I think you can understand that, because she says, the person would open up and tell him things. And, the question that he was asking questions for, they would open his heart to him. They would tell him, I want to see, I want to walk. Or Master, if you want, you could heal me. And then Jesus said, be healed. And I think in a way, when people said, I want you to do this for me, they took on the responsibility for themselves. they were asking him something that deep down in their hearts they wanted. And I find this, when you say what you need and what you want, they take responsibility for the requests in their lives. And this is one of the points that Joanna makes here in the introduction, for us to take responsibility for ourselves and our actions. And I think that's why the reason Jesus would always ask, because then the person would know what they wanted and take on the responsibility for that. And also, whatever they wanted to come out in the open, everyone would know. Because she says, most times we hide ourselves from our shadows and from our difficulties. But saying, what we wanted, then it makes it a lot easier to be able to. She also makes the point that deep psychology that's been developing, especially in the last few years, much more guided towards humanities, man itself, rather than just being analysis, you lie on a couch and you just tell things. It took like 2,000 years to begin to do things, and like Jesus used to do. And she quotes here quite a few of the very important psychoanalysts and people who created, therapies that deal not only with the problem, but also with the soul and the spirit. And she talks about Roberto Vasargioli and Melanie Klein, who worked with children, and Roberto Saggioli, of course, is psychosynthesis and first psychology that evolved the personal and psychospiritual. And also, she talks about Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, how we fulfill our needs before we can reach anywhere, which and then she talks also about Stanislav Gross, when his work with his book Beyond the Brain. He did a lot of research with LSD and everything, and he came to many, many conclusions that normally probably wouldn't, that there was something more, a spiritual part of this. So, I mean, this, you can all probably know much more about that than I do. You can always go in and, once you read the book, you can research those things. Um, I think also she says here that the personality of Jesus left such an impression on the people who ever met him. And reading the gospel, reading stories of Jesus, and even, strangely enough, things like films. I remember this English actor who played Jesus in a television series in the 70s. And it's funny because you see his image almost everywhere. And nowadays, I think of Jesus, I remember him because he had that kind of face. Um, he still leaves this mark on us. We still feel it. And I think one of the things that was very impressive about Jesus was that even the people who really didn't like him because he was challenging their status quo and the way they behave, they called him master, they called him rabbi, because they knew, even though they didn't like him, they knew that he was that person who was something more than just an ordinary man. And so he still impresses on us now, but he also offered, a lot of opportunities for people to, I think the point that Joanna says, that how, the challenges that we have and how the values, how we are going to open ourselves up, a mental awakening of our problems and how we reach out and how we'll sort it out. She talks about the Sermon on the Mount being, considered the Magna Carta, as she calls it, of human rights. And she says it's a treat for non-violence. And living in the world that we are living now, this comes much more important. Blessed are the pure in heart, blessed are the poor and the peacemakers and the merciful. So this is very, very important for us to connect with us. And I think this book sort of brings up um, all these things that we need, because one of the things, and going to the chapter that we find with Joanna, she tells things how it is. She says, "Oh, this is that, and if you behave badly, and you do this, and you do that," but she always, always offers a solution. She always gives us how we can get out of a sadness, of a shadow, of the things we do wrong, the things we don't like in ourselves, the mistakes we make. Almost every chapter, she always saying, this happens, that's the behavior, but that's what you can do. You can pray, you can help yourself. And when you cannot help yourself, you go to therapy. She says, sometimes you need help to sort your problems. And I think this is very, very special. But for me, one of the main points that she made here was that we need to have Jesus away from the cross. We need to see him not hanging there, but as a friend, as a companion, a therapist. She says, someone that, the way I feel it, someone you can just go and lay your head on when you're really trouble and going through many difficulties and pain and suffering, and when you don't know what to do. And I made a note here that he supports us, because not to let us fall in the abyss that we create for ourselves, because we know quite a lot of the problems. We do have problems that come from before, from childhood and everything, but I think quite a lot of problems we have are because we ourselves create a lot of the difficulties in our lives. If we could follow her, it would be a lot easier. Um, so Jonah says that the reason for this book was that we may find answers from Jesus, not the one hanging in the cross, but the one that walks with us, is the friend that we have and we can trust and we can go to when we have problems. So, the first chapter is the challenges, Jesus and the challenges, and just how difficult it is, evolution, how hard it is. And, she uses this sentences, which is so wonderful. So, the process of evolution was just a very great challenge for the spirit. And straight away, you know exactly what she means, because we hide ourselves behind the pride, selfishness, jealousy, envy, all these mountains of things, which are these mountains that we have. And it's difficult sometimes to let go, because it's not that we don't want to. And she said, sometimes w- we are growing to grow, and we find it that we find some peace and we try more and we start living just pleasing our physical body and just doing what it takes. But as we challenge and as we move on, we desire from something that's more valuable, something that goes beyond the immediate things that we have. And I think that is very good. But this challenge that she says is comes with an awareness that we had enough of being just, you know, here on earth, but our life goes beyond. We are much bigger than that. And I think this understanding, this coming to no, I am much more than the sum of my parts. I am a spirit, an eternal spirit with a future. And I think she makes the points in many ways, and she says that the constant struggles that we have, and we find some respite for it, we find some rest, but then we want more and more, and then we started to putting more effort into being the best person we can be, um, to love beauty, to love one another, to be more patient, more understanding. So I think this is one of the points that becomes straight from the first chapter for me. And she talks about how your heart moves and the muscles and all this. But then we feel that we need more. And she says something here. It says the progress in the progress is evolution is inevitable. We are going to progress. And it sort of reminds me one of the questions of the Spirit's book, in which Kardec asked the Spirit, but will everyone become enlightened? And the answer from the Spirit was always very objective. It's your destiny. That's the answer. It's your destiny. And Joanna says exactly that. The progress, the evolution is inevitable. We cannot fight against it. We may stay behind, sometimes we can be very stubborn, but eventually we will feel the need to go back to where we came from, which is the source of the divine. And I think that, the way she explains about how we cannot go back. We know, by studying this first book as well, that the spirit once you reach a level of evolution, of development, you can never go back. You may stay there for a bit, but you never go back. And she makes the point here: man cannot go back in his struggle. He needs to have the strength to go on. um, and she talks about not only us, but like she talks about this beautiful tree that goes out and we ourselves. And she says here something that is very interesting. The universe is renewed and proceeds molecule by molecule. And I was just thinking about, when they discovered the Higgs boson, which is the fundamental particle, molecule by molecule. And she's saying this, and science is finding it now, in 2012, I think it was when they did that. So I'm going to sort of conclude here, so you can come in and say what you need to say. But that's the beginning. And I mean, if this is the beginning, you can imagine how is to proceed. A lot of work, a lot of study, but to be wonderful. Sorry, I think, did I go too much, too far? Sorry.
Thank you, Sue. Now that's a wonderful introduction and wonderful open up the debate for us. So I'm gonna go to Dan to ask him to share some of his insights on the introduction and chapter one of the book.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you, wherever you are in the world. Do let us know where you're coming from in the chat if you can. We always are curious, at least I am. And it's really a great chance to have different perspectives to celebrate the publishing of this book. And before I start, I just want to say that it would be wonderful and experience if you were able to really get the book and read the chapters in advance to help us enrich in this conversation, because it's really not about us downloading things onto you. It is really us sharing some insights and some perspectives, but we do want to hear from you as well. And so we invite you to reflect on those things, and to the extent you can, place your questions or what are your main takeaways in our WhatsApp group in advance, so that we can have a richer and more meaningful discussion. Because for me, the truth is, there is absolutely no way that in 1 hour or 1 hour and a couple of minutes, we will cover in depth any of these chapters. So it really is about us getting some different perspectives in to talk about this incredibly important topic that Sylvia has laid out for us so well. Um, for me specifically, I think that I would love to zoom out and say that my greatest takeaway is the title of this book, and it is the case that Joanna makes about Jesus and the importance of Jesus right in the introduction. The currentness of Jesus is really the title that is not a spoiler alert. We know what she's going to talk about, right? Joanna seldom gives a spoiler alert. She is synthetic, to the point, extremely organized, and very clear on what she talks when we have the time to go through it. But what strikes me the most is here, and it's a fundamental message that I see in the introduction, and we see that in chapter 1 for me, is we need to re-signify and reinterpret Jesus. And I think the premise here is because we have not done a good job of understanding who and what Jesus is. So we need to go back and look deeper because our current understanding of Jesus is not sufficient, or I should say, does not honor that which Jesus represents. And I say that because in many different ways, the Jesus that we have come to know through our personal experiences, for me, seems like a game of telephone, sometimes called Chinese check whispers, which I think is a little bit culturally insensitive, but you get my point. Is we have heard about Jesus from people who have then heard about Jesus from previous people. And culturally speaking, we have received the version of Jesus that I have come to find out is woefully inadequate to the version of Jesus that I'm finding out when I dive into what he said instead of listening to what, culturally speaking, hundreds, if not thousands of years of human culture have told me. I have found a broader Jesus, a more encompassing Jesus, and I think that a lot of it has to do with Joanna's take on what Jesus is and how current he is to our lives. And so I say that because this could be a group effort in us rediscovering and diving deeper into that Jesusness. What is that the Christ brings us in terms of understanding us, and not just a mystical experience, not just something that you have to embrace because that's how faith is, you embrace blindly, but this desire to seek to understand why things are the way they are, and how great a communicator, an understander, a psychologist he was in comprehending the human plight and making easier for us to navigate life. I think that the one takeaway that we have from Jesus' passage here is that there is way more than the physical life, and that he shows us that by the resurrection, right? So, how does she do that? How can she help us grab this cause and say, I want to understand better how the Christ can live, the messages and the living that the Christ brought to us can lead me personally today to a better understanding of the world and a better, more fulfilling life. And I love the fact that she is going to help us get there by leveraging the psychological understanding that we have that is up to date. And hence, all these people that Sylvia laid out for us, all these great precursors of psychology, which is still a very young field in the course of human history, if you think about this. We have had less than 150 years of theoretical psychologies. And so we're still very new at this in many different ways, but it is this journey. And it's the journey of rediscovering what Jesus means and how interesting it is for us to go back and spend our time grappling with these ideas that she brings in this books and help us get there in many different ways. And I think that's the journey. That's the journey of this book. There are lots of different things that are very interesting. I think there is one sentence here that she says that really struck me, which is the landscape has changed, the values have not. And so it is very current for us to think about how did he act, even if it was 2,000 years ago, and how can that mean something to us? Because we are not just a product of today, we are the heirs of all this experience that still holds us back in many different ways, something that she also says. So I'm looking forward to this exploration with you. If we had more time, we had wonderful things. For instance, there was a sentence here, and I'm already gonna throw a grenade in there and see if Umberto later wants to pick this one up. Um, but she really talks about something that made me think of him, which is the search for the ethical and the aesthetical, right? It's what is the right thing to do and what is the beautiful. And how can we untangle that and bring that to our daily lives? And I think that it's a great way for us to look forward to all the chapters that are going to come. And how do we grapple with this idea? Keats came to mind with the ode to a Grecian urn, that poem that is a beautiful ending that says, beauty is truth and truth beauty. That's all you'll know on earth to know. So how can we dive to this beauty and to this truth? And how can we do that by going back to the source, the clearest, most pure water that we have, which was Jesus with us. So I'm excited about our study, and I hope that shares a little bit highlights a little bit of what my main takeaways of why this book matters and why I hope that you can grab your digital version or grab your paper version. Fabrizio can help you with the paper version, but I think the digital version, it's available on Amazon everywhere that you can get them. If you have a Kindle, you can read it on your computer if you don't have one. But the point is, we would love to have you join this conversation by reading along with us and then coming here to add to our exchange of ideas.
Thank you, Dan. It's interesting that we are going to embark on this journey of rediscovering Jesus. And what amazing opportunity for us to do that together in a study group. Just before I go to Umberto, I'm going to ask you a question then, because the chapter one, it talks about challenge, right? And Joanna says that everything in life challenges endurance. What is your take on that?
Not only does she say that, Fabs, but she says something that is also very beautiful that stood up. And there is this wonderful tension between the rationality of Joanna and her poetry, because some of her lines touch my soul deeply with her beauty, right? She talks about how ease is a loss of stimulus, which hinders, right, action. It's the whole idea, like, we struggle through things, and chapter one, aptly named Jesus about this. It starts with pain and suffering and the journey of the soul and how we struggle, we feel pain. And then as we're learning, we come up and feel peace. And then we go back and we have pain again. And then we yearn for that peace. And then with time, we learn how to go more towards peace and less towards pain, almost like we're learning how to swim, if that's an apt metaphor. When we begin to learn how to swim, we are just treading water and we are sinking and we're worried and we come up for air. With time, we are more in peace than we are struggling. But the struggle is what moves us forward. That is a mechanism for learning, which really changes everything the way I look at it when it comes to our existence here on earth. Because when we think of ourselves as an immortal spirit, then we begin to understand the words that she brings to us. Life is not about enjoyment and a lack of action or a lack of stimuli. Life is about growth. Growth sometimes comes through that pushing, through that natural movement. She makes a beautiful case for how everything in the universe is moving, everything, and that stimuli is what makes us forth. So it really is a great way for us to understand that the challenges that come to us in this life are meant to propel us forward. And that understanding how that works makes it easier for us to go through that process and spending some time thinking about how that works, how that affects us, and how we can take that into our daily lives will be a great benefit for us. At least that's my take. So it's really about taking a step back and seeing the whole in many different ways to know that there will be pain, there will be suffering, there will be stimuli that forces us forward. And it's up to us to decide how we are going to do that and how quickly we are able to minimize the suffering and increase the learning so that we can have these moments of peace even in the in the midst of trouble.
And it's very interesting. She gives all of that. We're gonna have challenge. We need to be in movement, but she also gives us this assurance that if you're resilient, if you are endurant, then we go through it. And then you said everything is in movement. It only take us an example in nature that demonstrate really well what you just said. Nature all the time through different seasons, going through different changes all the time, doesn't it? And then, for instance, a seed has to endure in strength to go throughout the soil so that become a little tree. And then when you see that in nature, and then John is giving us also the importance of us to be persistent and facing our challenge, give us quite a lot of comfort, right?
It's just beautiful, right? The case for change is there. We are roughly made of more than 36 trillion cells in our body that are in constant flux. She talks about our body. We look at the extremely minute, we see change all the time. We look at the universe completely changing with 4 billion, planets and galaxies out in the observable sky, just within the Milky Way. It's incredible. So change is here. How do we manage that? I think that's one of the great questions of this book, and I'm looking forward to hearing how our friends here also have a take to add for us on this perspective, because I love to have the different perspectives of not only our panelists here, but you who are out there watching us too. Do let us know if you can on the chat. What is it that was your takeaway from this first chapter? We would love to hear.
So now I'm coming to you, Umberto. What is your contribution on the insights of the book?
Well, greetings to everyone. Firstly, I would like to stress that it is very symbolic to me. It is a great pleasure and honor to be again in a group led by you, Fabrizio. You are responsible for encouraging me, you and the Osborns, to deliver the first speeches in English that I that I delivered, and it changed my life. So it is very relevant to me to work with you again. So, and I'm not drifting from our main subject, because actually encouraging people and promoting people to flourish, to develop their potentialities and abilities is the Christian thing to do. And we judge religious institutions and people, and we correctly judge them when they do the opposite of that, when a doctrine, a teaching that is supposed to enlighten is used by some to obscure, to harm, when a teaching meant to liberate is used to oppress and to control. That is especially evil. And even Jesus, it seems from the story from the Gospels, that he was actually angry or indignated just one time when divine things were corrupted or offended by the marketing of the divine things, the sacred things. So there is something very real, natural, and deep inside us that react against the misuse of spiritual teaching. And that's why Joanna de Angelis' approach is so special, because it is deeply philosophical, deeply psychological, but more than anything else, it is spiritual in the true sense of the word. It enlightens, promotes, encourages, and liberates people. Readings are the most quintessential part of anyone's personality, along with other products of the spirit, such as artworks or um, great accomplishments. They reflect the deepest meditations, reflections, struggles, and sentiments. As an author, I know that my bitterest tears are in my books and not in daily happenings in my life. And when we read Joanna de Angelis, we see that she achieves a new level of depth and the perfection of communication, because as a superior spirit, as an enlightened person and consciousness, she can touch very sensitively parts of our souls, parts of our lives, and our struggles that we usually cannot process. We cannot reasonably access and understand, comprehend these processes. So when you then mentioned ethical and aesthetical aspects of her work, it strikes me very hardly that these are the words that come very often, very frequently in philosophical discourse. And I'm very convinced that even if Joanna speaks much less about philosophy or even if she doesn't use the word philosophy very much as psychology, for example, she is one of the most philosophical authors in Spiritism, and is one of the most relevant Spiritist philosophers that we have available. So, and just to finish to my brief remarks, I would like to also stress that Divaldo is also an important and key person in the general process, not in Spiritism, in Spiritistic community only, but in the process of enlightening and awakening and spiritual growth of humanity. My first short story about Divaldo involves the fact that he was the first to know that I was about to be born before my mother. He told my mother she was pregnant, and she reacted negatively. She said, "No, actually not." And he insisted that she was pregnant, that it was a boy, then he was so and so, and he said some very
Surprise!
specific, very specific things. I will not repeat here, but things that are very relevant to my personality. And this is something that no one would ever dare without having absolute clarity of spiritual perception. Now, that's something we should not know superficially. And this obviously this is a paranormal gift. This is sensitivity or mediumistic capacity that has not much to do with his character, but it remembers us how is it to live with this degree of clarity of the mind and this degree of sensitivity all the time without being sensationalist, without exploring it for his own benefit, as many people do, and the sacrificial life, the discipline that he chose to live throughout his life for almost 100 years old, for almost a century, is a very striking evidence of the real character of the spirit and the power to impose to his own life, to his own lifestyle, a dignity and an elevation of purpose and intentions that are one of the best evidence that we can have that Christianity is not a romantic, idealized model. It is something that we can do, we can achieve, we can live up to the standard of Jesus' teachings.
Thank you, Humberto. So I'm gonna go to you, Anai, for your remarks, and then we will open for questions and answers. Um, Over to you, Anai.
Well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, everybody that is listening to us, and with my friends here, my dear friends. And thanks very much, Fabricio. As Humberto said, you inspired us and actually kind of give us a hand in, making possible for us to discuss and learn Joanna in English together, which is by itself a challenge. We are all facing challenges here. So everybody has said so many, beautiful things, and Sylvia had summarized so well the chapter. As a Jungian analyst, I would like to focus on the synchronicity of Divaldo's passing yesterday night and the first meeting here, where we are talking about the first of Joanna de Angelis' book, right? So just for people maybe that are not yet very much aware of the meaning of synchronicity, but I think it's a word that everybody nowadays has some ideas. But when we talk about synchronicities, right, from the depth psychology, Jung psychology that Joanna uses so much in her writings, we are talking about two events that are coinciding in time in an causal way, connected by meaning, actually. And it's always involved a deep emotion, a deep emotion. Some authors say that it's a state of grace. Okay, so we were all very moved by Divaldo's passing, right? As of course, we were all talking about that yesterday night, and suddenly we have already scheduled this meeting, right? So what does that mean? Does that mean from the point of view of our souls, our higher self, higher consciousness, what Jung called the self for Joanna, as I think everybody knows, is our spirit. So Sylvia has said so well that in this chapter, Joanna opens the book saying that we are always evolving. So I would only, and it's good to disagree sometimes. We don't have to agree with everything, right? So I was listening to what Dan was saying, that we haven't already realized that 2,000 years after what Jesus told us, and right, and quite understand. And I totally agree from the point of view of the ego, our consciousness in this life, right? The center of our personality, our consciousness here of the personality. We struggle with that. But we have to understand from the spiritist point of view, we have had many lives and we are learning, as Joanna says, we are evolving. So what Jesus, his example, his parables, his beautiful teachings were talking to us, to our higher selves, through time, out of time and space. And you know, planting some seeds so that and waiting from where in time and space it would blossom in our spirits. Okay, so why Joanna uses so much Jungian psychology, depth psychology, because Jung is the author, the psychiatrist and psychologist that opens the discussion in the academia about this higher self, this higher consciousness, and what it means in terms of the soul of our experience here in this earth. So I think it was very powerful synchronicity, and synchronicities as a state of grace, people, they happen because the self is very active. And I'm so, so much grateful to all of you that are here today, and to Fabricio and all my colleagues here, my friends, and especially to Joanna and Divaldo and all the spirits. It's not only the two of them, it's a lot of spirits working for our spiritual awakening, because we are in this wonderful time of we could say a spiritual awakening in the humanity. We are going to a next step of evolution, to the transition that we all know to a higher vibration on earth and in humanity, right? So nothing happens by chance when we are talking about spirit and about evolution and about love and about Jesus' teachings. So I just wanted to tell you, because we need time to discuss and we want that. I would say we are not here, the higher self of everyone here that is connected and will be connected, because the psyche, our souls they are out of space and time, okay? So it doesn't matter if people are listening to this later on. But I just wanted to tell my point here that Jesus said, that Joanna, sorry, said in the end of the chapter, those who fear the darkness get lost in the night. Be someone who lights up a candle to chase away the darkness. And it made me think immediately in Divaldo, right? Because we said he was connected, he was lighting up stars. He was talking, and through Joanna's teachings and connecting to her with all the higher spirits, they were trying, they are always trying to help us evolve in this towards this higher consciousness, because Joanna also talks in this chapter about divine consciousness that is within all of us. So when we connect to that, to this kind of knowledge, I would say then, as Jung says, that Christ is being reborn in the psyche. So it's a paradox, because from the ego point of view, we say, wow, but there are, so talks about war and violence when we are still doing silly things as humanity and hurting each other. So I totally agree with them. From this point of view, we are like, haven't we learned anything yet? We could ask ourselves, right? And we say, well, Joanna, please help us here. We need to exchange ideas to learn better. But from the self, capital S, self, Jung's concept of the self, and what Joanna says, the self, capital S, Jung's self is our spirit. So from this point of view, from the point of view of the spirit, we have the divine consciousness. And so I think Joanna is so beautiful because she talks to our egos, but she always and ever, she opens doors, right, for us to see deep inside of us, in our selves, in our spirits, and connect to this divine consciousness that we have, so that we can express this consciousness, this higher consciousness here, now, and overcome hurt, and overcome hatredness, and overcome fear. So I just wanted to end my talking here to you guys with another synchronicity. So were 3 events that I opened a book that I was reading. I don't think there's translation to English, because it's a medium from Brazil, that it's called Love Never Forgets You. And the paragraph that I was reading around the same time that I've heard about Divaldo's passing, and that I was also reading, I had just read reread Joanna's chapter of this beautiful book. So I just wanted to, it's very quick, it's one paragraph that is Jesus in this book talking to the main character, one of the main characters, that it's called Zacharias, okay? And Zacharias was thinking in his mind about the kingdom, about this strange kingdom made of, all the leftovers of society. And don't many of us sometimes feel, when we're facing challenges, like a leftover, well, I'm forgotten, nobody loves me, I'm alone, and this and that. And Zacharias was saying, well, this light that he represents, that the master, as Sylvia said, represents, is showing that we are all important, that each one of us, it's a star in the sky. So Jesus says to Zacharias, comes and of course read his mind. If you observe carefully, Zacharias, it is only in the darkness that stars are able to shine. I come in the name of my Father to ignite the stars that reside in the hearts of my friends, not so that they may be extinguished by the first breeze, but so they may shine and enchant the darkness, like the stars of tonight's sky. They serve as inspiration for thoughts of love and as guides to those who need to follow their paths, lest they become lost. When the storm lashes the landscape, it may seem as though the stars retreat, yet above the clouds they remain patiently watching, waiting for the tempest to pass, so they may once again reveal their faithful and enduring light. So I thank you so much. I'm not going to be able to be all in all the meetings because of work and because of the time here in Brazil. But I'm very thankful for all of you and for Fabrício for this beautiful study group. And let's just understand synchronicities that Divaldo is now, like we say, in an image of a star shining in the sky. But let's not forget that Joanna and Divaldo helped so much and are still helping to light up the lights inside of us, this divine consciousness that we all have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anaid. So I'm concerned about time. Our time is actually coming up to an end. So what I want to do, I just want to wrap it up with few sentences that we found on the chapter one, because this chapter one is talking about challenge. And that probably is triggering us to face our challenge, to understand our challenge. And Joanna gives us guidance how to actually deal with our challenge. And that's how I want to wrap it up and close our study tonight. So Joanna says, face the challenge of your life serenely. Do not be expect comforts that you don't deserve. Undertake your march indomitably, persevering in your inner values and increasing them through daily actions. So I leave those with you. Next chapter, we'll be doing chapter two is Jesus and reincarnation. And I hope to see you all next meeting. Bye for now, and thanks for being with us.
Fabrício, just before